between me trying to realize something. When you desire something and do nothing to achieve it or to fulfill it, it's going nowhere. But when you wish for something or you want something or determined to achieve something, then you exert all of the needed effort to get it done. This is what the real and positive hope, or the real and legitimate hope. The thing that we want to fulfill and we do our best to fulfill while believing our iman and maintaining our iman in Allah Azza wa Jal. So when we talk about those who subscribe to the true and legitimate hope, we're talking about a people with a vision and the ability to deliver on this vision. And when I say the ability to deliver on this vision, we're talking about people who know how to turn a road map into an actionable map, not only a desire again. And when we talk about people who subscribe to real and legitimate hope, we're talking about people who don't surrender and are not hostages of hopelessness and despair. They know how to get from A to B. And in all of that, throughout this process, they always maintain their hope, their iman, their firm belief in Allah Azza wa Jal. But we all know the story of this Bedouin man that came to the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with his camel. And this is a man who just embraced Islam. And when he saw the Prophet, he said, "A'aqiluha, should I tie the camel?" The logic was, or maybe the illogic, that I'm coming to the house of Allah Azza wa Jal. So Allah should protect my camel, whether I tie it or not. But the answer of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, "I'qilha wa tawakkal." Tie it first, and then you place your trust and your iman in Allah Azza wa Jal. But if you do the other way around, which is tawakkul, not tawakkul, dependency, not depending on Allah, because depending on Allah is doing my part and then I trust Allah. But dependency, I don't do my part and I think Allah will do it for me or someone else. This is not acceptable in Islam. This is not acceptable in Islam. The other point I want to make here, my dear brothers and sisters, is that hope eliminates when we think that despair has dominated. Why am I saying this? Because we find evidence in the Quran. We find evidence in the Quran to substantiate this notion. In fact, it is how we go about our daily lives. We're always aspiring. The reason why we leave early, why we wake up early, the reason why we work, the reason why we study, the reason why we exert all of these efforts is because we're trying to establish, to construct that hope, right? There is a goal that we have in our lives, regardless of the definition, of the scope of that goal. But we're always, persistent in constructing something in our lives or an objective that we want to achieve in our lives. And the Quran tells us that this is the only way forward, and that we should never despair, we should never surrender to hopelessness and despair. The Quran tells us the story of Yaqub alayhi salatu wassalam. We all know when Yaqub alayhi salam sent his son Yusuf with the rest of his brothers. I'm not going to go through the details because I know every one of us knows the story of Yaqub and his children, right? Everyone knows the story. Yaqub alayhi salam sent Yusuf with his brothers after they persuaded him. Then they came back. They ditched him. They came back. They claimed that Yusuf was eaten by a wolf. Yaqub never believed them, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But he couldn't prove otherwise because Yusuf was gone. Now we're talking about decades later. Decades later. Not few years later. According to some narrations, over 80 years later. There was a famine in Palestine. So the children of Yaqub, like the rest of the Bani Israel or the children of Israel who used to reside in Palestine at the time, they had to go to Egypt to get the provisions. And who was the premier of Egypt at the time? Yusuf alayhi salam, right? After he was found, taken, raised by the premier of Egypt, he himself, after a trial and a tribulation, after going to jail, became the premier. Again, I know that everyone knows the story. So the children of Yaqub alayhi salam go to Egypt. And their brother recognizes them. Yusuf recognizes them, but they couldn't recognize Yusuf. We're talking decades later. They couldn't recognize him. This is the boy that they ditched. Now suddenly he's the premier. So how would they recognize him? So Yusuf recognizes his brothers. He gives them what they came for. But he had a chat with them. He knows they have a younger brother. A full brother of his, unlike them who are half brothers of him. His name, according to some narrations, Benjamin. So he tells him, bring him next time. Otherwise, I'm not going to give you the provisions. They go and they persuade Yaqub alayhi salam, the father, because he didn't want to send them with them. He didn't trust them. He trusted them with Yusuf. He lost Yusuf. Now would he trust them with the younger brother of Yusuf? He wasn't. He didn't have that full confidence. But they persuaded him. So they take him. And we know the story. He was accused of thievery. He was accused that he has stolen. He was kept as a hostage by his brother, the premier, that they didn't know. And they go back to their father and they tell him, your son is gone now. But this time for real. They didn't lie to him. So Yaqub was overtaken by his sorrow and grief. And then the Quran tells us, وَتَوَلَّى عَنْهُمْ وقال يا أسف على يوسف وابيضت عيناه من الحزن فهو كظيم. And he turned away from them. From whom? From his sons who just came back. And said, oh my sorrow, over whom? Not Benjamin, not Benjamin. Over whom? Yusuf. He started with Yusuf. Imagine, this is the son that how he was, that they attempted to make him believe was eaten by the wolf 80 years ago. But he maintained his faith and his iman that Yusuf was still alive. So he's not now expressing his grief over Benjamin only, but he starts with whom? With Yusuf. He says, so he turns away from them and he says, oh my sorrow over Joseph. And his eyes became white from grief, for he was of that a suppressor. But it doesn't end there. He kept that iman that Yusuf is alive. He maintained his firm belief in Allah that one day he will be rejoined with Yusuf. But it didn't end there. And this is a prophet, a messenger of Allah. He had to act on that iman, even after he lost his sight. So what does he tell his children right after? He says, يا بني اذهبوا فتحسسوا من يوسف وأخيه ولا تيأسوا من روح الله إنه لا ييأس من روح الله إلا القوم الكافرون. Oh my sons, go and inquire about whom? Benjamin? No. Go and inquire about Yusuf, Joseph, and his brother. See where the iman is? But the iman had to be acted upon. Go and inquire about Joseph and his brother, and never despair of the soothing mercy of Allah, as only the disbelievers are the ones who despair from the soothing mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal. So my dear brothers and sisters, what we need to keep in mind, that we should never surrender to despair. We should never surrender to despair. أليس الصبح بقريب? That's what the Quran tells us. Even in the midst of darkness, when we think there is no way out, that we're overwhelmed, that the situation, that we're in an impossible situation, the Quran comes and says, أليس الصبح بقريب? Isn't dawn near? Dawn is near. But even in the story of Lut alayhi salam, when he was told, أليس الصبح بقريب, he was told to depart and leave. Allah didn't save him by staying in the town that was about to be ruined. Allah required him to leave, to exert that effort. So أليس الصبح بقريب, act upon that dawn is near. Why am I saying this? Because my dear brothers and sisters, I see that there is a lot of despair when it comes to the situation in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip. I see a lot of people have given up hope. A lot of people have given up on their brothers and sisters in Gaza. A lot of people have given up that victory is still viable, and that Allah will deliver them out of what they're witnessing now and they're going through. And when I say Allah, I am not saying it as subscribing to the dependency mentality. Rather, I'm subscribing to the hope that Allah instilled in us and instructed us to believe in, because our brothers and sisters in Gaza are doing their best. If you want to talk about steadfastness, it is in Gaza. If you want to talk about resilience, it is in Gaza. If you want to talk about patience, it is in Gaza. If you want to talk about Iman, it is in Gaza. If you want to talk about perseverance, it is in Gaza. So they haven't given up on their rights, on their dignity, on their freedom and liberty. Why would we give up on them? Why would we subscribe to this notion of despair and passiveness? What Gaza represents is a new spirit and a new unbreakable resolve that exists in every single one of us if we choose to. So Gaza is not an exception. Gaza is a model, and we can be emulating the model of Gaza if we choose to. This hasn't been going for 45 days or for 5 or 6 months now. This has been in the making for over 106 years, since 1917, when the Balfour Declaration was issued. But do you know, the Balfour Declaration was issued in November 2nd, 1917. But prior to that, the British government, George Lloyd's government, did not dare to issue the Balfour Declaration before it secured, prior to that in September 1917, the approval and the endorsement and the full support of the Wilson administration, who was a Democratic president. So this genocide that you see taking place in Gaza today is just a sentiment of a bigger and larger and more distant problem. But the Palestinian people have not given up on their rights since 1917. And they will continue to stand up for their rights until liberation is imminent and until liberation is realized. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. My dear brothers and sisters, let us get to the point. The unfolding genocide that is taking place in Gaza now, the over 31,000 people who have been massacred so far, the over 71,000 people who have been wounded, over 90% or 80+% of Gaza has been decimated. Over 90% of the Gazan people have been displaced. And when I say 30,000 or 31,000 and 70,000, we know that this is the floor, not the ceiling, because the death and injury is far more. There are thousands and thousands who are still under the wreckage. Their bodies are yet to be retrieved. But what I want us to know and to keep in mind, that this genocide is being aided and abetted by us, by our nation, by this administration, the Biden administration. And that places a greater responsibility on our shoulders. Yes, it is a great and a huge challenge that we're facing to change the dynamics, to change the trajectory, to change the policy. It is an uphill battle in America. But that means that it is a greater responsibility and a greater opportunity for us. Remember, always remember this. With challenges, opportunities arise. That's how you change a trajectory. Our life is about this. Our life is about this challenge and response. Every single of us, one of us, wakes up every single morning into challenges, into obstacles. And what we do is that we don't choose the challenges and obstacles, but we choose the remedies and the responses. That's what our lives is about, right? That's what we do. That's what presents us with greater opportunities. That's what makes us successful, and that's what determines our destiny. Whether we fail or we succeed is how we respond. So yes, we are against an uphill battle in America to change the trajectory, to change the policy. But you know what? The greater responsibility now is on our shoulders with a greater opportunity. I just came back from the Arab world. I can tell you that they will not change the situation at the present time. Inshallah, they will be in a position to change the situation. But they're not there yet because they have to deal with tyrants, because they have to deal with dictatorship, because they have to deal with oppression, because they cannot assemble and they cannot speak out and they cannot give a khutbah like the one I'm giving here. Had I given this khutbah in an Arab country, I would be jailed there. But in America, we are afforded these rights, and these rights are imperative, and these rights are imperative to act upon. And that's what we do. Now you see a shift in the tone of the administration that has given this lethal weapons, the administration that is giving the bombs that are devastating and decimating Gaza, the administration that is giving this diplomatic impunity to Israel is now changing course, now pressuring Netanyahu to allow more humanitarian aid. One of the avowed Zionists in America, the majority leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, just yesterday came out speaking against Netanyahu. Why? Because of the pressure you're applying here in America. Because of the work you're doing here in America. Because of the massive rallies that we have organized in America. Because of the awareness campaigns that we are working on here in America. It is because of the advocacy work that you're part of. It is because you believe that Allah will not abandon those who stand up for what is just, but acting on it. So this is what we do as the American Muslims for Palestine. Many people think that the work should be limited to massive demonstrations. Good, we want to do more demonstrations, and we are doing more demonstrations. And alhamdulillah, we brought hundreds of thousands to Washington, D.C. Many of you were there. I know that maybe on a weekly basis you have rallies and you have gatherings where you go and protest. But that's not enough. We have to be engaged. Engaged not only in terms of policy and political work, but also engage in terms of raising awareness. Now, when you see how Michigan has voted, over 100 plus thousand, over 13% voted and committed, it has a meaning. Hillary Clinton lost that state by 16,000 votes in 2016, 11,000 votes. When you see Minnesota with a 20% uncommitted in the Democratic primary, Hillary Clinton won that state by 44,000 votes. And that's the 44,000 votes that voted and committed. Now, I'm not saying vote for Biden or against Biden. This is not my argument, and I cannot say as a C3 organization, and the masjid cannot endorse or disendorse a candidate. But what I'm saying, that our work is paying off. What I'm saying, that this anger that you have, that you translate into action, is paying off. What I'm saying is that our potential is much bigger than where we are today. And for those who ask, how come that we were not in a position to prevent, to avert such a complicity with the genocide? I would say this is how much we invested so far in this type of work. Brothers and sisters, I'll continue to encourage and urge all of you, continue to send humanitarian aid. But you know what? Nothing is getting in, because the Israeli government wouldn't allow it. Some Arab states are accomplices. So what are we going to do about it? We cannot change the trajectory over there. We can continue to pressure here to change this trajectory, because the only state that can pressure the vessel state or the client state, Israel, is America. And the only people who can pressure the policymakers in this country is the American citizens. Think of yourself as an American citizen. Your voice does matter. Your opinion does matter. And you have organizations and the Muslim leadership that understands how to capitalize, how to framework, how to construct this anger that you have, this passion that you have, to translate it into pressure tools to make the change. This is the work that we're doing. So we're sending a humanitarian aid. Let us continue doing it. But who's going to guarantee that it's going to get in if we don't do our work here? If we don't rise the political cost for our elected officials, that there will be a reckoning if you don't do it. That's why Schumer turned around. That's why Biden turned around. It's not a sudden conscious awakening that they had or have. It's because of you. It's because of the work we do. And we could have been in a better position had we invested more in this type of work. I've been in your masjid many times, and you've been a very supportive community. Without you, we could have not done it. And without you, we cannot do it. And without all of us, we cannot alleviate and bring to an end this madness and genocide that is taking place in Gaza. We need you to continue to support us, to do this work, to continue to build that pressure and to build the momentum. When we started the Americans for Justice in Palestine Action, AGP Action, a C4 organization that solely does lobbying, we did it on behalf of the Muslim community. We did it because you stood behind us. We did it so we can lay out a roadmap for you coming in November. We did it so we can utilize your anger and your passion and your commitment and your resilience to be pressure tools and to be translated into policy. We cannot do it without you. Yes, it is tax exempted, whatever you give to the American Muslims for Palestine, but what is more important is that it will exempt us, inshallah, from the hellfire, and it will have the effectiveness that we're looking for. I need a few minutes of your time after the prayer, inshallah, to continue this fight, to continue this war, this fight for justice, to bring this madness and this genocide in Gaza to an end. Shedding tears is not gonna cut it. Going into the streets alone is not gonna cut it. And our dua alone, as I said, I started with this. Hope is not only a matter of faith. Hope is what you construct, what you realize, what you plan, and what you exert efforts for. This is what hope is. And then I place my trust in Allah. Let us do it together. I need a few minutes of your time after the prayer. Remember, this is a day of the days of Ramadan. Ramadan ushered a new era in humanity. It was a month of change, not a month, only a month of ibadah. Ya ayyuhal muddathiru qum fa'anzir. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam didn't keep the message for himself. He suffered, he struggled. He lived pain and sorrow and grief until Islam became the religion we know today. And I'm asking everyone to follow on the footsteps of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في غزة، اللهم كن لهم، اللهم ارفع، اللهم انزل غضبك ومقتك على كل ظالم وعلى كل مجرم. اللهم انتقم من كل من خذل مظلوما، ومن كل من خذل مسلما، وكل من خذل من يدافع عن دينك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم كن لمرضاهم وكل جرحاهم وكن لمشرديهم وكل شهدائهم. اللهم كن لكل مستضعف في كل مكان في العالم، في سوريا، في الصين، في ميانمار، في كشمير، في كل مكان. اللهم انصر المستضعفين وانتقم من الظالمين، واجعلنا من أدواتك يا الله لكي يتنزل نصرك وتتنزل رحمتك علينا وعلى الناس. وأنت يا أخي أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر، الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله.
ايش احسن؟ استووا straighten your lines. صلوا صلاة مودع. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين، اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. إن المتقين في جنات وعيون ادخلوها بسلام آمنين. ونزعنا ما في صدورهم من غل إخوانا على سرر متقابلين، لا يمسهم فيها نصب وما هم منها بمخرجين. نبئ عبادي أني أنا الغفور الرحيم. نبئ عبادي أني أنا الغفور الرحيم، وأن عذابي هو العذاب الأليم. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم. Inshallah, just a few minutes. If you have to leave, there is a table outside with pledge cards, and if you want to give a credit card, you can give it to the masjid or donate to the masjid. Brothers and sisters, as I said, Yaqub alayhi salam kept his iman, he realized it, and they found Yusuf and his brother. And I want us to believe that we can do the same, relying on Allah and doing our best, changing the policy here. Your brothers and sisters in Gaza depend after Allah on us acting here. Who can give us the first $5,000? We need to continue this fight. We cannot change what is taking place there if we don't change it here. Takbir. May Allah accept from you and your family, inshallah, and make you among the forgiven, you and your family tonight, inshallah. Who can give us the second $5,000, inshallah? Do we have anyone with a $5,000? Anyone? I'll go to $2,500. And again, if you're leaving, there's a table outside, or go give it to the masjid. Can anyone give us $2,500, inshallah? Jazakallah khair. May Allah make you and your family among the forgiven tonight, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. May inshallah make you and your family among the forgiven. Do we have more hands, inshallah? $2,500. Do we have any more hands? Okay, I'll move to the $1,000. How many can we get, inshallah, with $1,000? Who's number one? Jazakumullah khair. May Allah accept from you and your family. Number two, Jazakumullah khair. Number three, Jazakumullah khair. Number four, $1,000, ikhwana. If you have to leave, go to the office or give it, there are pledge cards. Number 4 and 5. Do we have more $1,000, inshallah? Anyone else? Okay. $500. I know people will give on the table, or will give to the office, inshallah, in the office. Do we have $500? Jazakumullah khair. Do we have the second one? $500. Anyone? Jazakumullah khair. Do we have more hands? $500. Anyone else? Okay. Now I'm not diminishing the 300, the 250s, the 100 and the 10 and the $1. Give whatever you can give. اتقوا النار ولو بشق تمرة. Try to avoid Jahannam either by a part of it, or try to bring victory to Gaza, into Gaza, and change here in America even with $1. Go to the office or to the table outside, the pledge cards. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah accept from all of us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
السلام عليكم. يعني إن شاء الله حتى $100 $50 show your loyalty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to this organization to do the job, the responsibility that most of us are busy to do it. So please, please, please donate and help your brothers in America Muslim for Palestine for this great mission, It is your responsibility. May Allah help them and bless them, inshallah, to continue work in that side. جزاكم الله خير وبارك الله فيكم أجمعين.